I tried to
How
use
long?
the bar.
Today's Thursday, right?
Pushed it,
Yeah.
and then, that one's a little too faint, I can't see
Is
that
today?
one, but.
All right, let's pick back up on page 829. We just got just a tiny bit more to do in here, and then I'm going to point out a couple of resources for you, as you mentioned. First, symbology.
This one's a 4-page.
Yes, we use a lot of symbols. Page 829 has some of them. It's not a complete list. We'll be adding to this over the course of the semester, but there's some good general ones. First off, the multiplier one. You're going to love this one. Saves you a ton of work. Now, you want to be real careful with the use of this as well as with abbreviations. This one says 4 by a diameter of 0.375. I'm on page 828, figure 1725. The multiplier comes first, okay? And you put that X on there. Remember, this is all capital letters. So this would be 2 by, 3 by, 4 by, 6 by, 15 by, 19 by, whatever the case might be. And then you leave a space and follow it with the dimensional information. Okay? You'll love this one. Now, you want to be a little careful with this because you're going to see another abbreviation used with that's very similar, where you're going to see something like diameter 0.375, comma, TYP. Okay?
Typical.
Typical. Does a lot of the same thing, but you want to be careful using them, because on both of these, if I say 4 by diameter 0.375, the person's going to look on that view and try and find 4 of them. I would suggest you don't put 6 by if you see 4 here and 2 in another view. Okay, don't have them go hunting through a bunch of views. Can you in an emergency? Yes, but I wouldn't go that route. If I'm having them look in multiple views for a like object, I'm going to go with typical. Okay. Now on typical, we don't have a multiplier. We don't tell them how many there are. But that should be the only thing undimensioned on the drawing. Okay, so they'll look out there and see an arc and it's undimensioned. Guess what? It's getting that typical dimension. Every one of them. Okay, so you want to be a little careful with how you use these. I like the multiplier if possible. Okay. It's a little bit more descriptive. There's 4 of them. They can find those 4. If I got to another drawing and I see 2 more of these holes somewhere, maybe they're blocked by something over here, I would dimension it again on this view and use 2 by and give the same dimension. So I'm sticking that multiplier with the view. The typical is a lot like a general note. It almost applies for everything. Okay? And it's just saying, hey, I've got diameter 0.375, it's typical. I've got a bunch of circles on here. The only ones undimensioned or unsized will get that size. Okay? And you've seen this many times, like the very first drawing you did, the saw blade, 18 typical, right?
Is that ever put in the notes?
Yes, all fillets and rounds, 0.125, typical. Well, maybe not, it's not a great example. All fillets and rounds, 0.125, I should say UOS, which is another common abbreviation. UOS means unless otherwise stated. Okay, so all fillets and rounds that were undimensioned would get that. I love that in the general notes. Saves you from dimensioning it on the drawing, right? Take advantage of that, by the way, when you are putting your drawings together. Now, don't be sizing features like holes and, part things that are important to the part. Okay? But you can use it for something minor, like a fillet or a round, which are generally safety devices, right? All we're doing is rounding a corner so we're not cutting people up as they handle the stuff.
If you use typical, do you put it in the notes also?
No, I don't. I kind of used a bad example there. I don't know that I would ever use typical in a note.
Okay.
Okay. As a general note, excuse me. Yes, Becca.
So what if they like alternate dimensions or alternate countersinks or something like that? Would you do 2 by whatever?
I'd be very careful.
Okay.
Don't forget the 3 C's.
Clear, concise, and
Yeah.
complete.
If there's a room for confusion, then yeah, I might do each one individually.
Okay.
If I think it's very apparent what's going on, then I start using multipliers, typicals, these types of things.
Okay.
Okay, and it's a judgment call by the drafter. Yes.
We had a drawing where there were sink, what are they,
Countersink,
countersinks and.
counterboards.
They were both there and there was, it said, I think there were a total of 5 and 3 of them were one, and 2 of them were one, and they used that. Did you think that was clear?
No, I did not. I know exactly, it's auto stop, I think was what the name of that drawing was. No, I thought it was quite ambiguous.
Did that on purpose.
But we got it all right, but we had an isometric view. It was just for demonstration purposes, so.
Right. But so that is something, I mean, since we did it, that might make us think that it was good, and that's one reason why I asked.
Yeah, no, that wasn't done very well. Yes.
So if they like all, say all those 4 circles have like a countersink of like 0.5 or whatever, would you put that in the notes or would you put it right there by the,
No, you go with the no.
in the note? Okay.
Yeah. And again, we're gonna come to circles and we're dealing with circles tomorrow. And
Oh, okay, sorry.
We'll handle our special. No, don't be sorry. It's a good question, let's answer it. Which brings me to these symbols over here. Okay. So we do use these, countersink, spot face, counterbore. You do have square, which is the square. Okay. You will see the square symbol, by the way, a lot of times with a line through it. That's a convention that we use here in the Magic Valley. And I think it comes from old Roger Laughlin. I think he started this process and it's just picked up by every firm throughout. So if we're dealing with a square, you only have to dimension one side of the square if you use that symbol. Because a square, all sides are equal, right? Okay. So you can use those. The depth symbol is now used instead of the old abbreviation, which was DP. Now we use the depth symbol. By the way, these are all an 1/8 inch. Okay. So when you look at these and you're building them, that would be an 1/8. And that would be an 1/8. And then this one, you just use a V for the countersink. Use a capital V if you're on the computer, or you can hand letter that as a capital V. This guy right here, if you want to write down some information on how to do a depth, that's an 1/8 there. This dimension right here is a 16th. And then this angle, I kind of took it away. It's 60 degrees. And then it's an 1/8 wide too, right here. And I'd give you more for that. I would just sketch it in your text maybe. When we go to the computer, I just make a block of this and I insert it. Because there is none with your text. And other than that, just use that 1/8 to build those. Symbols are used everywhere. This is not an all-encompassing list. It's a good list for now that we see. So you got your repeating one, 4x, as I give the example here. Got your counterbore, same ones used for spot facing. You have your countersink, diameter, square, and depth. All right, now, I'm going to stop there on the information given. If you turn the page, you'll notice we start getting into a bunch of circle stuff. I'm going to come back and we're going to look at all those situations in pretty good detail tomorrow. But as you go through your drawings, there's a couple sources I would like you to pay attention to when you finish your drawing. Because we talked yesterday where the first thing you do with the thing is you look for your contours, right? Because you're going to do contour dimensioning first. The second thing you're going to do is then do associative dimensioning. You're going to take all those contour dimensions and try and stick them in between objects so you can use them for different views. Then you're going to do grouping, where you're going to put like dimensions together or as many dimensions together as you can, right? Those 3 processes should happen. Now there's a lot of little subtleties that go with dimensioning also. You have some checklists available to you. By that, I didn't write down the page number, but I'll find it right here. Starting on page 837 of your text. The author goes through the ANSI standards, or the guidelines for dimensioning, and I think there's 13 of these. I would suggest that when you dimension a drawing, and you've done those three things, contour, associative, grouping, then you come to this list and go through it, and read the list through. By the time you get to your fourth or fifth drawing, you'll probably know the list. Okay? And you won't have to read it that often, but you want to get familiar with this. So like the first one, every dimension must have an associated tolerance. That tolerance must be clearly shown on the drawing. Have you folks tolerance to drawing yet?
And drawing one?
Drawing 1A or 1B or 2A. Did any of you tolerance that drawing?
In the note.
Yeah, all of you toleranced it. You used a general tolerance for the drawing.
I was like,
As opposed to an applied, yeah, I was just wondering if you made the connection, so that's why I phrased it like that, but you did. Yes, you toleranced every drawing, but did you do that? Okay, so that's something to just check. Then go to the next one. Double dimensioning of a feature is not permitted, and it shows you a figure to go to. Know what those are, and these are great guidelines to go through. They go through 33. Okay. Now, the last one, leader lines for diameters and radii should be radial lines. We just covered that today. Okay, so a real quick punch list of 13 items. Now, it gets a little more complicated than that. Therefore, I gave you a handout. While you were on break, I set this on everybody's desk. I love this handout. I do want to caution you a little bit. This came out of the Gesicki text over off of here. I copied it out of there because the visual description of dimensions is much better in this than our text does. Okay, so I wanted you to see that. But I caution you when you look at the text on it, because this was pre-1994 when ANSI made a ton of changes. Okay, so the text is wrong. Like, they don't use the depth symbol on here, they use DP. You'll see things like drill. We no longer tell people how to build stuff. But all of the figures haven't changed. Okay, so they're all still correct. What I'd like you to do on this for now is I'll just point out a couple of pages. Really, I want to look at the end of it, but there's one in here that's also pretty pertinent. Look at page 315 of the handout. Okay, the title of this, and I still don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, superfluous. Superfluous means redundant. Superfluous? Is that the way you say it? Okay, I'll go with you, Cheryl. I'm sure you understand the English language better than me. Superfluous. Let's see if I can remember that. Basically, this means redundant. This is great examples of double dimensioning throughout this thing. They give you a ton of examples. Why would you use a multiplier like here versus doing each single one? Okay. So a good page to look at to see if you made any of these mistakes. What I really wanted to point out for today is if you would turn to page 322 of the handout. This is the checklist I use. I don't use the one in our text. Do's and don'ts of dimensioning. I hate to tell you this, but there's 58, 59 of them. Do you want to read this list every time you do a drawing?
no.
I would the first couple, to be honest with you. I would. And then you're going to see where you make mistakes and you go, oh, I got to start paying attention to this one. Okay. But this is where you're going to get stuff that is always kind of sitting in the background, rarely gets talked about, but is placed here. Like number 8. Nowhere in our text does it tell you anything about this. Dimensions to hidden lines should be avoided wherever possible. In fact, I'll tell you, you should never dimension to a hidden line, because if you did, you haven't drawn the object right. Okay? That's a geometric deal. You did not describe the geometry if you were dimensioning to a hidden line. Because we need object lines true size and shape, right? We just spent a month and a half figuring that out. Never dimension to a hidden line.
It's number 10 on ours, avoid dimension hidden lines.
Yeah, that's the only place you'll find it in our text. But there's a bunch of these. These are great. Again, don't deal with the ones that say, you know, like number 12. Now, this is a correct statement. Am I showing that on there? Let me kind of zoom into it. Number 12. In machine drawing, all unit marks should be omitted, except when necessary for clarity. For example, 1 millimeter drill. Okay, but no, I'm not putting millimeter and I'm not putting drill on the drawing. That stuff is no longer done. Okay, but the other part is correct. We do not put units of measure on a drawing. There's only one discipline that does. Yeah, you know which one.
Architectural.
There's 57 of them. No, 57 is kind of a nice one. Cumulative tolerances should be avoided, especially in limit dimension. Didn't we just talk about that today? That's tolerancing stack up? Good. Great lists. And they're in essence punch lists. So when you finish your drawing, I would recommend that you bump to these lists, scan them. You're going to find the ones that you make mistakes on and not, but these are good checklists. All right, that's really what I wanted to cover for today. Are there any questions for what we've talked about or anything? Oh, I was going to give you a chance to ask any question on your drawings. Sorry. Is there anything you're seeing on your drawings you're unclear of how to do? Because I'm getting a lot of questions on arrowheads. I think we addressed those today. Missy, do you have a question?
Just like the numbers and the measurement itself. So, so do you want the decimal? So you want, instead of just like 2 inches, you want 2.00?
Yes.
Okay.
And the reason that's coming is we keep our significant figures the same. In their notes, you've got all dimensions plus or minus 0.02 inches. So you're telling them I'm going to 2 decimal places. And so therefore, every dimension on that drawing should have 2 decimal places, even if it's even. Like you said 2.00, you wouldn't put just 2. You keep your significant figures throughout a drawing. Okay? There is a way for us to change our significant figures, but it has meaning. And we're going to cover that. It's actually in this chapter, 17. And we'll cover that.
And then I'm just going down from the center and then trying to get it centered that way.
Yeah.
Is that-
Use guidelines.
Okay.
Okay, this is really lettering in today's world. Okay, so if I'm putting a dimension out, and let's say I draw my extension line, the way I would do these, I draw my extension line, and then I'm going to find where that 0.5 inch off is, right? Okay, because I need that. I'm going to sketch a light construction line. I'm going to find the center of it, and I know, oh, I got three figures I'm doing, like 2.00. So I've come to the center, and I know, hey, that's going to require 4, so I'm going a 1/4 inch each side. I know it's about here. I'm going to give myself a couple guidelines, okay? And these should be very hard lead, right? So we don't have to erase them. Okay, so we just lightly see them, construction lines. And then I'll come in here, this should be a construction line, and then I'm going to come in and letter this guy. Okay? And do my best to make this thing extremely good. Okay. Then I'll come in, make sure I got around the 16th there. Now, when you do your arrowheads, I don't know if everybody heard we were talking about, because it was during break. I want you to freehand those. I do have some templates in the back that has 1/8 inch arrowheads on it. Please don't use them. And the reason for I want you to do this is we don't do manual drafting in today's world for the most part, but we do a ton of text sketching. Okay, where we go to a place and we record information and bring it back. And when you folks are 2 years down the road, you're probably going to be supervising others, where you do sketches and you hand it to somebody, some newbie fresh out of college. And you're going to say, draw this up for me, because you're going to be in more of a supervisory role. And you're going to be sketching all day long. You want to try and have those arrows so they can never be distinguished for something else. And you're not going to take the time to measure that. Nobody does. Nobody's going to pay you to do that. So what I would suggest is on your table somewhere, draw an arrowhead that's exact. And I don't care how you come about this. But have this thing sitting somewhere so you got a visual cue, and then when you come to your drawing, you go ahead and get good at placing those together so that you can draw the outline and then fill it in. Now there's a lot of different ways to do it. I think, Becca, you said you were taught by doing a constant thing. Is that the way you were taught?
Yeah.
But experiment, because we're all a little different. I do much better with 2 lines coming off at approximately 30 degrees, and then I draw my vertical. But maybe you do it all in one stroke, whatever. Just practice with it. Try and get that arrowhead an 1/8 inch. Remember that width's only 1/3 of that, okay, which is a pretty small measurement. The idea being you're consistent with it. Okay? I would just suggest don't use any templates for your arrows. I'll be somewhat lenient with it because I'd rather you have a skill of being able to start sketching correctly than to ding you for being a 16th out on something on a drawing that we know what it is anyway. Are there any other things on your drawings, per se? 1A, 1B?
We answered questions on the next one today already.
Okay. How do we avoid our extension lines crossing dimension lines on this when we did it yesterday? Do the short one first, right? Then the overall. Don't do this one, and an overall. That's double dimensioning. Don't do this one and this one because with tolerancing, that's unbuildable. You need one and then an overall. Leave one leg undimensioned when you come through those. You have an angle in this one. You all know how to do an angle. We prefer 2 lengths of the triangle over a length and an angle, but both are acceptable. But it's preferred to give a linear measurement over an angled measurement every time. You didn't have 3, right? You had this guy? When you see these types of shapes, think reference dimensioning. Don't double dimension those things. But you can include reference dimensions. Okay, you see a lot of reference dimensions with these types of shapes right here. Anybody know what I'm talking about with the reference dimension?
Where you put it in parentheses, because it's not actually required.
Yeah, said exactly. Put it in parentheses, not required for construction.
And when you leave it associated, when you pull it down, can you pull it down off the bottom so it's not confused with every?
No, I'm going to use it associative.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't think you should have any dimensions on this side or this side on any of these so far.
Yeah, okay.
We haven't gone to a 3 view yet, so you don't have to worry about right or left, whether in grouping should say they're all on one side versus switching back and forth. You got an angle over here, so you're probably over here. Now on this guy, you might have to a little bit because you got to locate.
That wasn't perfect.
So you might group by feature, whatever the case might be. We can circle stuff on 5. Is anybody there?
It's that
Okay.
picture today.
Because I can wait till tomorrow when we talk about all that jazz. Keep in mind, folks, as you go through these, if you wish, you have full sections available to you. You have half sections. You got auxiliary views if you need them. Everything that we've done so far. So if you think you need to add to the drawing to clear up something, feel free to. That's part of the process. That's why we get paid the big bucks, is make those calls. Never got a single laugh on that one. All right, with that said, I guess I'm done if there's no further questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.